Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We're continuing our reading of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. We're at the Fourth Canto, chapter 8, and we're starting up where we left off this morning at around 8:30 a.m. at texts 59 through 60. And the title of the chapter is Dhruva Mahārāja Leaves Home for the Forest. Welcome everyone who's joined us online, and thanks for coming into the live studio audience here at Govardhan Hill Studios. Anyone who thus engages in the devotional service of the Lord seriously and sincerely with his mind, words, and body, and who is fixed in the activities of the prescribed devotional methods, is blessed by the Lord according to his desire. If a devotee desires material religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, or liberation from the material world, he is awarded these results. Purport. Devotional service is so potent that one who renders devotional service can receive whatever he likes as a benediction from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The conditioned souls are very attached to the material world, and thus, by performing religious rites, they want the material benefits known as dharma and artha. 61. If one is very serious about liberation, then he must stick to the process of transcendental loving service, engaging 24 hours a day in the highest stage of ecstasy, and he must certainly be aloof from all activities of sense gratification. Purport. There are different stages of perfection according to different persons' objectives. Generally, people are karmis, for they engage in activities of sense gratification. Above the karmis are the jnanis, who are trying to become liberated from material entanglement. Yogis are still more advanced because they meditate on the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And above all these are the devotees who simply engage in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. They are situated seriously on the topmost platform of ecstasy. Here Dhruva Mahārāja is advised that if he has no desire for sense gratification, then he should directly engage himself in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. The path of apavarga, or liberation, begins from the stage of moksha. In this verse, the word vimuktaye, for liberation, is especially mentioned. If one wants to be happy within this material world, he may aspire to go to the different material planetary systems where there is a higher standard of sense gratification. But real moksha, or liberation, is performed without any such desire. This is explained in the Bhakti-rasamrita Sindhu by the term anyabhilashita shunyam, without desire for material sense gratification. For persons who are still inclined to enjoy material life in different stages or on different planets, the stage of liberation in bhakti yoga is not recommended. Only persons who are completely free from the contamination of sense gratification can execute bhakti yoga or the process of devotional service very purely. The activities on the path of apavarga up to the stages of dharma, artha, and kama are meant for sense gratification. But when one comes to the stage of moksha, the impersonalist liberation, the practitioner wants to merge into the existence of the Supreme. But that is also sense gratification. When one goes above the stage of liberation, however, he at once becomes one of the associates of the Lord to render transcendental loving service. That is technically called mukti. For this specific vimukti, liberation, Narada Muni recommends that one directly engage himself in devotional service. 62. When Dhruva Mahārāja, the son of the king, was thus advised by the great sage Narada Muni, he circumambulated Narada, his spiritual master, and offered him respectful obeisances. Then he started for Madhuvan, which is always imprinted with the lotus footprints of Lord Krishna, and which is therefore especially auspicious. After Dhruva entered Madhuvan forest to execute devotional service, the great sage Narada Muni thought it wise to go to the king to see how he was faring within the palace. When Narada Muni approached, the king received him properly, offering him due obeisances. After being seated comfortably, Narada began to speak. The great sage Narada Muni inquired, "My dear king, your face appears to be withering up, and you look like you have been thinking of something for a very long time. Why is that? Have you been hampered in following your path of religious rites, economic development, and sense gratification?" Purport: the four stages of advancement of human civilization are religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and for some, the stage of liberation. Narada Muni did not inquire from the king about his liberation, but only regarding the state management, which is meant for advancement of the three principles of religiosity, economic development, and sense gratification. Since those who engage in such activities are not interested in liberation, Narada did not inquire from the king about this. Liberation is meant for persons who have lost all interest in religious ritualistic ceremonies, economic development, and sense gratification. 65. The king replied, "O best of the Brahmanas, I am very much addicted to my wife, and I am so fallen that I have abandoned all merciful behavior, even to my son, who is only 5 years old. I have banished him and his mother, even though he is a great soul and a great devotee." Purport: in this verse there are some specific words which are to be understood very carefully. The king said that since he was very much addicted to his wife, he had lost all his mercy. That is the result of becoming too affectionate towards women. The king had 2 wives. The first wife was Suniti, and the second was Suruchi. He was too attached to the second wife, however, so he could not behave well with Dhruva Mahārāja. That was the cause of Dhruva's leaving home to perform austerities. Although as a father the king was affectionate towards his son, he minimized his affection for Dhruva Mahārāja because he was too much addicted to the second wife. Now he was repenting that both Dhruva Mahārāja and his mother Suniti were practically banished. Dhruva Mahārāja went to the forest, and since his mother was being neglected by the king, she was, therefore, almost banished also. The king was repentant for banishing his boy, because Dhruva was only 5 years old, and a father should not banish his wife and children or neglect their maintenance. Repentant over his neglect of both Suniti and her son, he was morose, and his face appeared withered. According to Manusmriti, one should never desert his wife and children. In a case where the wife and children are disobedient and do not follow the principles of home life, they are sometimes given up. But in the case of Dhruva Mahārāja, this was not applicable, because Dhruva was very mannerly and obedient. He was, moreover, a great devotee. Such a person is never to be neglected. Yet the king was obliged to banish him. Now he was very sorry. "My dear Brahmana, the face of my son was just like a lotus flower. I am thinking of his precarious condition. He is unprotected, and he might be very hungry. He might have lain down somewhere in the forest, and the wolves might have attacked him to eat his body. Alas, just see how I was conquered by my wife. Just imagine my cruelty. Out of love and affection, the boy was trying to get up on my lap, but I did not receive him, nor did I even pat him for a moment. Just imagine how hard-hearted I am." The great sage Narada Muni replied, "My dear king, please do not be aggrieved about your son. He is well protected by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although you have no actual information of his influence, his reputation is already spread all over the world." Purport: sometimes when we hear that great sages and devotees go to the forest and engage themselves in devotional service or meditation, we become surprised, How can one live in the forest and not be taken care of by anyone? But the answer given by a great authority, Narada Muni, is that such persons are well protected by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sharanagati, or surrender, means acceptance or firm belief that wherever the surrendered soul lives, he is always protected by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is never alone or unprotected. Dhruva Mahārāja's affectionate father thought his young boy, only 5 years old, to be in a very precarious position in the jungle. But Narada Muni assured him, "You do not have sufficient information about the influence of your son. Anyone who engages in devotional service anywhere within this universe is never unprotected." My dear king, your son is very competent. He will perform activities which would be impossible even for great kings and sages. Very soon he will complete his task and come back home. You should know that he will also spread your reputation all over the world. Purport. Here in this verse, Narada Muni has described Dhruva Mahārāja as Prabhu. This word is applicable to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sometimes the spiritual master is addressed as Prabhupāda. Prabhu means the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Pada means post. According to Vaishnava philosophy, the spiritual master occupies the post of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or in other words, he is the bona fide representative of the Supreme Lord. Dhruva Mahārāja is also described here as Prabhu because he is an Acharya of the Vaishnava school. Another meaning of Prabhu is master of the senses, just like the word Swami. Another significant word is Sudushkaram, very difficult to perform. What was the task that Dhruva Mahārāja undertook? The most difficult task in life is to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Dhruva Mahārāja would be able to do that. We must remember that Dhruva Mahārāja was not fickle. He was determined to execute his service and then come back. Every devotee, therefore, should be determined that in this life he will be able to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and by that process go back home, back to Godhead. That is the perfection of the highest mission of life. Text 70. The great sage Maitreya continued. The king Uttanapada, after being advised by Narada Muni, practically gave up all duties in relation with his kingdom, which was very vast and wide, opulent like the goddess of fortune, and he simply began to think of his son Dhruva. Elsewhere, Dhruva Mahārāja, having arrived at Madhuvan, took his bath in the river Jamuna and observed fasting in the night with great care and attention. After that, as advised by the great sage Narada, he engaged himself in worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. The significance of this particular verse is that Dhruva Mahārāja acted exactly according to the advice of his spiritual master, the great sage Narada Muni. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti also advises that if we want to be successful in our attempt to go back to Godhead, we must very seriously act according to the instruction of the spiritual master. That is the way of perfection. There need be no anxiety over attaining perfection, because if one follows the instruction given by the spiritual master, he is sure to attain perfection. Our only concern should be how to execute the order of the spiritual master. A spiritual master is expert in giving special instructions to each of his disciples, and if the disciple executes the order of the spiritual master, that is the way of his perfection. 72. For the first month, Dhruva Mahārāja ate only fruits and berries on every third day, only to keep his body and soul together, and in this way he progressed in his worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. Kapita is a flower which is known in Indian vernacular as kot. We do not find an English equivalent for the name of this flower, but its fruit is generally not accepted by human beings. It is eaten by monkeys in the forest. Dhruva Mahārāja, however, accepted such fruit, not for luxuriant feasting, but just to keep his body and soul together. The body needs food, but a devotee should not accept foodstuff to satisfy the tongue in sense gratification. It is recommended in Bhagavad-gītā that one should accept as much food as necessary to keep the body fit, but one should not eat for luxury. Dhruva Mahārāja is an acharya, and by undergoing severe austerities and penances, he teaches us how one should execute devotional service. We must carefully know the process of Dhruva Mahārāja's service. How severely he passed his days will be shown in later verses. We should always remember that to become a bona fide devotee of the Lord is not an easy task. But in this age, by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, it has been made very easy. But if we do not follow even the liberal instructions of Lord Chaitanya, how can we expect to discharge our regular duties in devotional service? It is not possible in this age to follow Dhruva Mahārāja in his austerity, but the principles must be followed. We should not disregard the regulative principles given by our spiritual master, for they make it easier for the conditioned soul. As far as our ISKCON movement is concerned, we simply ask that one observe the 4 prohibitive rules, chant 16 rounds, and instead of indulging in luxurious eating for the tongue, simply accept prasadam offered to the Lord. This does not mean that with our fasting, the Lord should also fast. The Lord should be given foodstuff which is as nice as possible, but we should not make it a point to satisfy our own tongues. As far as possible, we should accept simple foodstuff just to keep the body and soul together to execute devotional service. It is our duty to remember always that in comparison to Dhruva Mahārāja, we are insignificant. We cannot do anything like Dhruva Mahārāja did for self-realization because we are absolutely incompetent to execute such service. But by Lord Chaitanya's mercy, we have been given all concessions possible for this age, so at least we should always remember that neglect of our prescribed duties in devotional service will not make us successful in the mission we have undertaken. But by Lord Chaitanya's mercy, we have been given all concessions possible for this age, so at least we should always remember that neglect of our prescribed duties in devotional service will not make us successful in the mission we have undertaken. It is our duty to follow in the footsteps of Dhruva Mahārāja, for he was very determined. We should also be determined to finish our duties in executing devotional service in this life. We should not wait for another life to finish our job. 73. In the second month, Dhruva Mahārāja ate only every 6 days. And for his eatables, he took dry grass and leaves. Thus continued his worship. What? Is that what you have, the last sentence? Oh, I'm missing a pronoun. I quit. Thus he continued his worship. 74. On the third month, he drank water only every 9 days. Thus he remained completely entranced and worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is adored by selected verses. In the 4th month, Dhruva Mahārāja became a complete master of the breathing exercise, and thus he inhaled air only every 12th day. In this way, he became completely fixed in his position and worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead. What? What happened? I missed another one? Oh, what he was doing? It wasn't like skipping prasadam one day. Yeah, it's amazing. By the 5th month, Mahārāja Dhruva, the son of the king, had controlled his breathing so perfectly that he was able to stand on only one leg, just as a column stands, without motion, and concentrate his mind fully on the Param Brahman. He completely controlled his senses and their objects, and in this way he fixed his mind, without diversion to anything else, upon the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. The yogic principles of meditation are clearly explained here. One has to fix one's mind upon the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead without diversion to any other objective. It is not that one can meditate or concentrate on an impersonal objective. To try to do so is simply a waste of time, for it is unnecessarily troublesome, as explained in Bhagavad-gītā. When Dhruva Mahārāja thus captured the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the refuge of the total material creation and who is the master of all living entities, the three worlds began to tremble. In this verse, the particular word Brahman is very significant. Brahman means one who not only is the greatest, but who has the potency to expand to an unlimited extent. How is it possible for Dhruva Mahārāja to capture Brahman within his heart? This question has been very nicely answered by Jiva Goswami. He says that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the origin of Brahman. For since he comprises everything material and spiritual, there cannot be anything greater than him. In the Bhagavad-gītā also, the Supreme Godhead says, I am the resting place of Brahman. Many persons, especially the Mayavadi philosophers, consider Brahman the biggest, all-expanding substance. But according to this verse and other Vedic literatures, such as Bhagavad-gītā, the resting place of Brahman is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, just as the resting place of the sunshine is the sun globe. Srila Jiva Goswami therefore says that since the transcendental form of the Lord is the seed of all greatness, he is the Supreme Brahman. Since the Supreme Brahman was situated in the heart of Dhruva Mahārāja, he became heavier than the heaviest, and therefore everything trembled in all three worlds and in the spiritual world. The Mahatattva, or the sum total of the material creation, is to be understood as the ultimate end of all universes, including all the living entities therein. Brahman is the resort of the Mahatattva, which includes all material and spiritual entities. It is described in this connection that the Supreme Brahman, the Personality of Godhead, is the master of both Pradhana and Purusha. Pradhana means subtle matter, such as ether. Purusha means the spiritual spark, living entities who are entangled in that subtle material existence. These may also be described as para-prakriti and apara-prakriti, as stated in Bhagavad-gītā. Krishna, being the controller of both the prakritis, is thus the master of Pradhana and Purusha. In the Vedic hymns also, the Supreme Brahman is described as Anta-pravishta Shasta. This indicates that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is controlling everything and entering into everything. The Brahma Samhita further confirms this. Andantarasta paramanu chayantarastam. He has not only entered the universes, but he has entered even into the atom. In Bhagavad-gītā, Krishna also says, Vrishtabhyaham Kṛṣṇam. The Supreme Personality of Godhead controls everything by entering into everything. By associating constantly with the Supreme Personality in his heart, Dhruva Mahārāja naturally became equal to the greatest Brahman by his association, and thus became the heaviest, and the entire universe trembled. In conclusion, a person who always concentrates on the transcendental form of Krishna within his heart can very easily strike the whole world with wonder at his activities. This is the perfection of yoga performance. As confirmed in Bhagavad-gītā, yoginam apisarvesham, of all yogis, the bhakti yogi who thinks of Krishna always within his heart and engages in his loving transcendental service is the topmost. Ordinary yogis can exhibit wonderful material activities known as ashtasiddhi, 8 kinds of yogic perfection. But a pure devotee of the Lord can surpass these perfections by performing activities which can make the whole universe tremble. 79. As Dhruva Mahārāja, the king's son, kept himself steadily standing on one leg, the pressure of his big toe pushed down half the earth, just as an elephant being carried on a boat rocks the boat left and right with his every step. The most significant expression in this verse is prativarbhaka, son of the king. When Dhruva Mahārāja was at home, although he was the king's son, he was prevented from getting on the lap of his father. But when he became advanced in self-realization or devotional service, by the pressure of his toe, he could push down the whole earth. That is the difference between ordinary consciousness and Krishna consciousness. In ordinary consciousness, a king's son may be refused something even by his father. But when the same person becomes fully Krishna conscious within his heart, he can push down the earth with the pressure of his toe. One cannot argue, how is it that Dhruva Mahārāja, who is prevented from getting up on the lap of his father, could press down the whole earth? This argument is not very much appreciated by the learned, for it is an example of Nagna Matrika logic. By this logic, one would think that because his mother in her childhood was naked, she should therefore remain naked even when she is grown up. The stepmother of Dhruva Mahārāja might have been thinking in a similar way, since she had refused to allow him to get up on the lap of his father. How could Dhruva perform such wonderful activities as pressing down the whole earth? She must have been very surprised when she learned that Dhruva Mahārāja, by concentrating constantly on the Supreme Personality of Godhead within his heart, could press down the entire earth like an elephant who presses down the boat on which it is loaded. 80. When Dhruva Mahārāja became practically one in heaviness with Lord Vishnu, the total consciousness, due to his fully concentrating and closing all the holes of his body, the total universal breathing became choked up, and all the big demigods and all the planetary systems felt suffocated and thus took shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When hundreds of persons are sitting in an airplane, although they remain as individual units, they each share in the total force of the airplane, which runs at thousands of miles per hour. Similarly, when unit energy is identified with the service of the total energy, the unit energy becomes as powerful as the total energy. As explained in the previous verse, Dhruva Mahārāja, because of his spiritual advancement, became almost the total heaviness, and thus he pressed down the whole earth. Moreover, by such spiritual power, his unit body became the total body of the universe. Thus, when he closed the holes of his unit body to firmly concentrate his mind on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all the units of the universe, namely all the living entities, including the big demigods, felt the pressure of suffocation, as if their breathing were being choked. Therefore, they all took shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead because they were perplexed as to what had happened. This example of Dhruva Mahārāja's closing the holes of his personal body and thereby closing the breathing holes of the total universe clearly indicates that a devotee, by his personal devotional service, can influence all the people of the world to become devotees of the Lord. If there is only one pure devotee in pure Krishna consciousness, he can change the total consciousness of the world into Krishna consciousness. This is not very difficult to understand if we study the behavior of Dhruva Mahārāja. 81. The demigod said, "Dear Lord, you are the refuge of all moving and non-moving living entities. We feel all living entities to be suffocating, their breathing processes choked up. We have never experienced such a thing. Since you are the ultimate shelter of all surrendered souls, we have therefore approached you. Kindly save us from this danger." Purport. Dhruva Mahārāja's influence attained by executing devotional service unto the Lord was felt even by the demigods, who had never before experienced such a situation. Because of Dhruva Mahārāja's controlling his breathing, the entire universal breathing process was choked. It is by the will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead that material entities cannot breathe, whereas spiritual entities are able to breathe. Material entities are products of the Lord's external energy, whereas spiritual entities are products of the Lord's internal energy. The demigods approached the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the controller of both kinds of entities, in order to know why their breathing was choked. The Supreme Lord is the ultimate goal for the solution to all problems within this material world. In the spiritual world, there are no problems, but the material world is always problematic. Since the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the master of both the material and spiritual worlds, it is better to approach him in all problematic situations. Those who are devotees, therefore, have no problems in this material world. Vishvam Purnam Sukhayate. Devotees are free from all problems because they are fully surrendered unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For a devotee, everything in the world is very pleasing because he knows how to use everything in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. 82. The Supreme Personality of Godhead replied, "My dear demigods, do not be perturbed by this. It is due to the severe austerity and full determination of the son of King Uttanapada, who is now fully absorbed in thought of me. He has obstructed the universal breathing process. You can safely return to your respective homes. I shall stop this boy in his severe acts of austerities, and you will be saved from this situation." Purport. Here one word, Sangatatma, is misinterpreted by the Mayavadi philosophers, who say that the self of Dhruva Maharaj became one with the Supreme Self, the Personality of Godhead. The Mayavadi philosophers want to prove by this word that the Supersoul and the individual soul become united in this way, and that after such unification, the individual soul has no separate existence. But here is clearly said by the Supreme Lord that Dhruva Maharaj was so absorbed in meditation on the thought of the Supreme Personality of Godhead that he himself, the universal consciousness, was attracted to Dhruva. In order to please the demigods, he wanted to go himself to Dhruva Maharaj to stop him from this severe austerity. The Mayavadi philosopher's conclusion that the Supersoul and the individual soul become united is not supported by this statement. Rather, the Supersoul, the Personality of Godhead, wanted to stop Dhruva Maharaj from his severe austerity. By pleasing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one pleases everyone. Just as by watering the root of a tree, one satisfies every branch, twig, and leaf of the tree. If one can attract the Supreme Personality of Godhead, naturally he attracts the whole universe, because Krishna is the supreme cause of the universe. All the demigods were afraid of being totally vanquished by suffocation, but the Personality of Godhead assured them that Dhruva Maharaj was a great devotee of the Lord and was not about to annihilate everyone in the universe. A devotee is never envious of other living entities. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the Fourth Canto, 8th chapter of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, entitled Dhruva Maharaj Leaves Home for the Forest. Bravo! Sadhu, sadhu! Bravissimo! So now we'll take some reflections or questions. Yes? Yes.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I was looking at the different austerities that Dhruva Maharaj performed, and just reminded us that in the process of practicing yoga to be balanced, and so we start slow and it gradually increases and exponentially also. And you find that there was one purport we read, I think 2 days ago. It was about how if we stay in the fire of devotional service, it increases and it goes exponentially. So and relating that to book distribution, why making book distribution fun and easy is helpful is because it gets that person on the street, and before you know it, they're distributing 50 books in like a few months' time. And so this practice of yoga, it's helpful to start slow but steady.
Slow and steady wins the race. Thank you. Moskoshi arimasu ka? Yes. You got one? Your man over there's ready when you're done.
I was just thinking, it was mentioning the Mayavadi philosophers think that Dhruva is merging into the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So I was thinking, how much are they actually reading Bhagavatam? Do they read Bhagavatam? Prabhupada's mentioned the Mayavadi philosophers.
Do they read Bhagavatam?
But I thought they...
Is that a rhetorical question? What?
Yeah, is that something that... Because I thought they were more focused on like the Vedanta Sutra or something like that, not the Bhagavatam.
Well, they try to wreck everything.
Hare Krishna. What do you think about devotees who do things like observe Chaturmasya and Nirjala Kadashi and these different options that we have for practicing austerities?
What do I think about the devotees who do it? They're very courageous.
You think that there's a lot of value in doing that for us in Prabhupada's movement?
Yeah, you should try it. You got to grow your hair and nails, and you can only eat once a day, and you have to eat off the floor. And what you eat is havishan. It's rice and mung with no spices, no salt. When you eat off the floor, we clean the floor. Otherwise, it's really gross. And then you put down, and you can only eat for the day as much as you can eat with your head down in the havishan. And once you get up, you can't eat again the rest of the day. You want to do it? Yeah, when you're young is the time to do it. We tried all these things when we were young brahmacharis, and had great entertainment value. And it's kind of natural for young people to try all kinds of stuff. I got nothing against it. It's nothing Prabhupada promoted. Prabhupada stuck to following the mission. Follow the basics. Chant Hare Krishna. Study Bhagavatam and think about how to spread the mission all over the world. And if those things get in the way of that, of the basics, then what you get is a lot of razzle-dazzle. It's like sometimes people try to learn a skill and then they go for the frills before they have the basics down. And it's not very pleasing. So it's not necessary. But it is good to be austere and do some austerities. But one thing that happens with things like Chaturmasya is you kind of get into a exclusivistic mindset. Like, I'm doing this, what are you doing? Oh, you guys are eating again? I don't eat. Just you eat. How can you eat all that rich food? And stuff like that. Yeah, having lived in ISKCON for 50 years, we've seen a lot of stuff, right? Like a lot of eras. People have gone through trying this, that, the other thing. I don't know, does that help? Yeah, try it for a day or two, see how you like it. Yes, 1, 2. Radha-kripa, you're part of the outside people's party. Let's take one from outside, from Radha-kripa, and then we'll come right back to you.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, my question is, the demigods, they handle the affair on behalf of Supreme Personality of Godhead, and how come, it seems they have a limited power to manage...
What?
It seems they have a limited power to manage the affair, it seems, because Dhruva...
I can't hear. If you put the mic down just a little bit, so it's below your lips, right there, that's the perfect place. Try it again.
Okay. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I was just asking a question that Dhruva Maharaj austerity was, the demigods couldn't control, and they felt like helpless, and they went to the
demigods couldn't control him because he was taking over the universal air. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. And then I was wondering, since the demigods handle this responsibility on behalf of many affairs on the behalf of Supreme Personality, it seems their powers are limited. Is it true, or
No, they're very. We're interdependent. There's the adivic person, adiphotic person, as Prabhupada explains in his purports. The demigods are dependent on the human beings to perform sacrifices, as is mentioned in this cycle of sacrifices in the 3rd chapter of the Bhagavad-gītā. And they're interdependent. Kind of like in a prison, there's the prisoners and the prison guards. And so they're also very much part of the universal affairs. They're not unlimitedly powerful. They're in some ways as dependent as, and of course it depends on each person's karma, but they're dependent in that they are interdependent with the other living entities who are part of the scheme of the material world. So when, there are examples in the Shastra about when the demigods aren't getting their share. We heard a lot about shares. And if the people stop performing sacrifice, they don't get their shares, then there's some scarcity for the devas also. So there shows their dependence.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Yes, I wanted to just make a reflection. In purport 69, Srila Prabhupada said, the most difficult task in life is to satisfy the Supreme Personality of God. And Dhruva Maharaj would be able to do that. And also, Srila Prabhupada said after that, by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, we have this process now. But I'm just thinking that it is not easy to. We have the process, but still it's like difficult. It's not just like so easy to perform.
Yeah, it's not cheap. Not a cheap process. One learns, I would say, over a long period of time what anarthas really are. Very sticky. And crossing over anartha nivritti into nishta is no joke. One has to be very serious and willing to face one's own ineptitude and surrender to Kṛṣṇa to overcome anarthas, to admit that one has foibles, and also they're sticky, I said, or hard to overcome for a reason. If they weren't, then it would be likely that we would take it for granted that we could dabble in the material world and still be Krishna conscious. But as one continues practicing devotional service, one realizes the implication of sense gratification. I read part of a commentary in the Yoga Sutras that said the yogis are reluctant to engage their senses in sense gratification because especially Hladini samskars, or those activities that produce a peak kind of happiness in the material world of sense gratification, are very difficult to get rid of once you've got them. So the commentator said that the yogis are as sensitive as an eyeball. And then they explain that the eyeball is one of the most sensitive parts of the body, and we're always trying to protect it. Because anything that gets in your eye, even a little speck of dust, it becomes an irritant. So yogis have realized that letting their senses engage in the sense objects without connecting to Kṛṣṇa becomes troubling, and it lasts for a long time. They try to be careful. Yes? Oh, you had one. Okay, go ahead.
A question and a reflection. A basic question to confirm is, it was mentioned only the three worlds, meaning the material world was trembled. The news, or there was no adverse effect in the spiritual world, right?
There was it said even the spiritual world trembled, didn't it?
Yeah. So, but then in 81 purport, Srila Prabhupada says that it's by the will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead that material entities cannot breathe, whereas spiritual entities are able to breathe.
So all it said was it trembled. Didn't say they couldn't breathe in the spiritual world. It just meant that his influence was even more than universal. Yes, we'll come right back to you. Chakadola.
Online, it's from Ananta Gauranga Das.
Ananta Gauranga. Sashiburi.
Hare Krishna, always inspiring. One devotee can purify whole world.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And,
Okay.
I
Yes?
have one realization that this world is going on only because of the devotees. If devotees will not be here, then there is no purpose in this material world.
Yeah, there's a verse like that the universe wouldn't be able to go on unless there were devotees in it. Okay, you can do yours, and then we'll go. Who was next? Yeah, and then Avaduta. Go ahead, Dr. Ryan.
Mahārāja, I'm wondering if you can say more about anartha-nivritti. On that topic, what does it look like when anarthas come up? How do we identify that it's happening in our consciousness? And since it's a very bewildering thing, what's the best way to work our mind in the situation where the mind becomes bewildered by some past impressions? Sometimes the mind can get really bewildered, and it's a hard thing to understand why it's happening, how to deal with it, and also how to identify it, have clarity in the situation, understand, okay, this anartha is arising, and how I'm going to deal with it.
Well, anartha-nivritti means crossing over certain obstacles. And they're listed by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in the Madhurya Kandambini. The first one is sleep. Especially sleeping during your bhajan. That you're hearing and chanting, but then your brain shuts off. And the second one is distraction. That we're prone to distraction. These are the obstacles to nishta, which comes right after anartha-nivritti. So Vishwanath describes nishta, which incidentally has the word shta, which is cognate with the word stand in English. It means you have a place where you can be steady. And distraction means that you're not always able to think of Krishna like Dhruva Maharaj was. It's times when your mind goes elsewhere. And the next one is that there's no distractions. You're not sleepy, but you just don't care. Meh. Like, meh, I'm not into it. And then he describes that there are innate material qualities like lust and greed in the heart. And those surface from time to time and distract us from our steady devotional service. And then he says the senses are contaminated, so they become attracted to their objects. And those are the obstacles that one has to overcome for nishta. And the best way to overcome all anarthas is to chant Hare Krishna. Cheto Darpana Marjanam. We chant Hare Krishna, we're directly in contact with Krishna. What happened? I don't think you can. That's the lowest it goes. Sorry. Chanting Hare Krishna, described by Kapila Dev, that when you do direct devotional service, it digests the anarthas imperceptibly, just as when you eat food, it gets digested and you're not sure how it's happening. However, there is a way in which it's important to recognize we have anarthas and to come to grips with them and pray to give them up, and also to be very, not just determined, but make a decision at a certain point that I'm going to give them up. And I'll give you a story that illustrates that. Giriraj Maharaj tells how in Bombay there was a person who was translated Prabhupada's books into Marathi, and he would come to see Prabhupada to verify some of the translations and ask questions. And he would bring his father with him sometimes, because his father wanted to meet Prabhupada, who didn't. And his father had a habit of smoking, and he admitted it to Prabhupada, and in subsequent visits, after Prabhupada had advised him to, or encouraged him, that he should give it up, because the man was thinking, I should give this up, and that's why he admitted it. And Prabhupada asked him about it. And then he said, the man, that, oh, for this, Prabhupada, I need your special mercy. And Prabhupada answered that, hey, Krishna can give you special mercy, but it means he'll make you so miserable that you'll be forced to give it up. He said, would you like the special mercy? And the man said, no, I'll give it up myself. Which indicates that there's a juncture, a time at which we have to recognize our own anarthas and decide to give them up. Expose them to the light of day. Don't keep them behind our back in a box and say, I'll keep that one for later. And we can get such strength by association with more advanced devotees, because we see that those who have given up anarthas are happy and successful, and we want to be like them. We don't want to get left behind and be sitting somewhere forlorn by the side of the road with a little sack of stupid habits that we decided to hold on to. It's so embarrassing. Does that help? There was a couple more. Yes? Avadutra.
This point that Srila Prabhupada made, Chakadola Prabhu mentioned it, that there is, Srila Prabhupada writes, if there is only one pure devotee in pure Krishna consciousness, he can change the total consciousness of the whole world into Krishna consciousness. I thought that point was really amazing. I was just hearing a lecture by Srila Prabhupada last night, and Prabhupada was explaining that we do not want to just simply increase our numerical strength and have so many followers. And then Prabhupada went on to quote Chanaka Pandit, Ekas Chandras Tamo Hanti Nacha Tara Sahasrasaha. If there is one moon in the sky, then it's sufficient. If there's one moon in the sky, it's sufficient. And then Srila Prabhupada was going on to glorify that many moon-like boys and girls have come to me. And then Srila Prabhupada said, many moons.
Mm-hmm. Any other things? Yes? One online and then we'll go to you, Prabhu.
It's from Madhuvani Dasi, Dandat Pranam. I once heard that anartha nivritti can last lifetimes or can pass in only a moment. Is this true, or can you elaborate, please? Hare Krishna.
Yes, it's true. Because, as we say, sometimes the verse that chanting Hare Krishna, if we're not giving up the 10 offenses to the holy name, then we can go on chanting for many lifetimes. You can do this the easy way or the hard way. And Prabhupada writes in one of the most epic purports of all time in Sarvadharma Parityāja. In fact, it was in the BTG that I got. I couldn't stop reading that. I read it so many times. And he mentions there that you can give it up in a minute. Surrender is up to the soul. And he gave, not in that purport, but elsewhere, an example. He said that, the context was he was having a conversation with an Indian gentleman who said that you have to be qualified to surrender. And Prabhupada said, no. It's already there, our free will. And he said, if you're a poor man and a rich man comes to you with a bag of money and offers it to you, you have two choices. Take it or don't take it. So he said, same thing. Krishna comes and says, I'll deliver you from all sinful reactions. You can take it or not take it. And if you take it, you can take it right now. Just take it in 1 second. That's the power of the soul. You're not obligated to hang out morose by the side of the road, a little bag full of cheap thrills that you won't give up for the sake of going back to Godhead. So yeah, it can be in a moment, or one can hang on life after life. I've seen it. I mean, I've seen people who know what Krishna consciousness is and who principle, they stay on the periphery and they won't come to that point. It's like, okay, I give up. And you can see when people do surrender, everybody gets enlivened. We talk about one pure devotee purifying the whole world. Even a neophyte devotee who says, I surrender, you can see it in them. Like, wow, that person surrendered. In fact, one of the most enlivening of all programs is initiation programs. It's inevitable. After initiation program where people get up there and they say, I vow to follow the four regular principles, I'm going to chant 16 rounds every day without fail for the rest of my life. So many people afterwards will come up and it's like, oh my God, I better get my life together. Because they recognize that I can do that too. And why wait? And why wait for many lifetimes? But if you want to do that, Krishna's so kind that he gives opportunity. So you want to catch the next train? Okay. Catch the next train. You can go on for a long time. Prabhu?
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. I want to share one reflection. Whenever I was reading, listening to the...
You got to speak up. Everyone's craning.
Sorry, I'm audible now. Whenever I was hearing to the austerities of the Dhruva Maharaj, I was thinking about how Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj was doing the austerities in his own way, like observing the Chaturmasya Vrat. I don't know exactly for how many years he has observed, but he had observed for a good amount of time, and also he chanted 192 rounds for one whole year. And also he gave up mango in his early age. So I was just, this thought came to me when I was hearing to the austerities of the Dhruva Maharaj. I just want to share this point.
Yeah. Austerity is the wealth of the Brahmanas, Prabhupada used to say. Okay? Outside People's Party, everyone happy? Haribo! Okay, let's see. We're going to take our cow break, and we will be back here at 22 minutes and 30 seconds after the hour. Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udiraye. We're reading from the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 9, entitled Dhruva Mahārāja Returns Home. And if you're just joining us, you came at a good time. We're at text number 1. Here we go. The great sage Maitreya told Vidura, when the demigods were reassured by the personality of Godhead, they were freed from all fears, and after offering their obeisances, they returned to their heavenly planets. Then the Lord, who is non-different from the Sahasrashirsha incarnation, got on the back of Garuda, who carried him to the Madhuvan forest to see his servant Dhruva. Purport. The word Sahasrashirsha refers to the personality of Godhead known as Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. Although the Lord appeared as Kshirodakshaya Vishnu, he has been described here as Sahasrashirsha Vishnu because he is non-different from Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. According to Srila Sanatan Goswami in his Bhagavad-gītā, the Sahasrashirsha personality of Godhead who appeared at that time was the incarnation known as Prishni-garbha. He created the planet known as Dhruvaloka for the habitation of Dhruva Mahārāja. 2. The form of the Lord, which was brilliant like lightning, and in which Dhruva Mahārāja, in his mature yogic process, was fully absorbed in meditation, all of a sudden disappeared. Thus Dhruva was perturbed, and his meditation broke. As soon as he opened his eyes, he saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead personally present, just as he had been seeing him in his heart. Purport. Because of his mature position in yogic meditation, Dhruva Mahārāja was constantly observing the form of the personality of Godhead within his heart. But all of a sudden, when the Supreme Personality of Godhead disappeared from his heart, he thought that he had lost him. He was perturbed, but upon opening his eyes and breaking his meditation, he saw the same form of the Lord before him. In the Brahma Samhita 5.38, it is said, Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena. A saintly person who has developed love of Godhead by devotional service always sees the Lord's transcendental form of Sham Sundar. The Sham Sundara form of the Lord within the heart of a devotee is not imagination. When a devotee becomes mature in his prosecution of devotional service, he sees eye to eye the same Shamasundara he has thought of during the entire course of his devotional service. Since the Supreme Lord is absolute, the form within the heart of a devotee, the form in the temple, and the original form in Vaikuntha, Vrindavan Dham, are all the same. They are non-different from one another. 3. When Dhruva Mahārāja saw his Lord just in front of him, he was greatly agitated and offered him obeisances and respect. He fell flat before him like a rod and became absorbed in love of God. Dhruva Mahārāja, in ecstasy, looked upon the Lord as if he were drinking the Lord with his eyes, kissing the lotus feet of the Lord with his mouth, and embracing the Lord with his arms. Purport. Naturally, when Dhruva Mahārāja personally saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face, he was very much agitated in awe and respect, and it appeared as if he were drinking the entire body of the Lord with his eyes. The devotee's love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead is so intense that he wants to kiss the lotus feet of the Lord constantly, and he wants to touch the tips of the toes of the Lord and constantly embrace his lotus feet. All these features of Dhruva Mahārāja's bodily expression indicate that upon seeing the Lord eye to eye, he developed the 8 kinds of transcendental ecstasy in his body. Although Dhruva Mahārāja was a small boy, still he wanted to offer prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead in suitable language, but because he was inexperienced, he could not adjust himself immediately. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, being situated in everyone's heart, could understand Dhruva Mahārāja's awkward position. Out of his causeless mercy, he touched his conch shell to the forehead of Dhruva Mahārāja, who stood before him with folded hands. Purport. Every devotee wants to chant the transcendental qualities of the Lord. Devotees are always interested in hearing about the transcendental qualities of the Lord, and they are always eager to glorify these qualities, but sometimes they feel inconvenienced by humbleness. The personality of Godhead, being situated in everyone's heart, specifically gives a devotee intelligence to describe him. It is therefore understood that when a devotee writes or speaks about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it is dictated by the Lord from within. This is confirmed in Bhagavad-gītā, 10th chapter. To those who constantly engage in the transcendental loving service of the Lord from within dictates what to do next in order to serve him. When Dhruva Mahārāja felt hesitant, not knowing how to describe the Lord for want of sufficient experience, the Lord, out of his causeless mercy, touched his conch shell to Dhruva's forehead, and he was transcendentally inspired. This transcendental inspiration is called Brahma-maya, because when one is thus inspired, the sound he produces exactly corresponds to the sound vibration of the Vedas. Okay, that warrants another reading, doesn't it? Second? You second it? Okay. Here we go. This transcendental inspiration is called Brahma-maya, because when one is thus inspired, the sound he produces exactly corresponds to the sound vibration of the Vedas. Therefore, the sound vibration of the Hare Krishna mantra, although presented in the ordinary alphabet, should not be taken as mundane or material. 5. At that time, Dhruva Mahārāja became perfectly aware of the Vedic conclusion and understood the absolute truth and his relationship with all living entities. In accordance with the line of devotional service to the Supreme Lord, whose fame is widespread, Dhruva, who in the future would receive a planet which would never be annihilated even during the time of dissolution, offered his deliberate and conclusive prayers. Purport. There are many important items to be considered in this verse. First of all, the relationship between the absolute truth and the relative material and spiritual energies is here understood by a student who has complete knowledge of the Vedic literature. Dhruva Mahārāja never went to any school or academic teacher to learn the Vedic conclusion, but because of his devotional service to the Lord, as soon as the Lord appeared and touched his forehead with his conch shell, automatically the entire Vedic conclusion was revealed to him. That is the process of understanding Vedic literature. One cannot understand it simply by academic learning. The Vedas indicate that only to one who has unflinching faith in the Supreme Lord, as well as in the spiritual master, is the Vedic conclusion revealed. The example of Dhruva Mahārāja is that he engaged himself in devotional service to the Lord according to the order of his spiritual master, Narada Muni. As a result of his rendering such devotional service with great determination and austerity, the personality of Godhead personally manifested himself before him. Dhruva Mahārāja was only a child. He wanted to offer nice prayers to the Lord, but because he lacked sufficient knowledge, he hesitated. But by the mercy of the Lord, as soon as the Lord's conch shell touched his forehead, he became completely aware of the Vedic conclusion. That conclusion is based on proper understanding of the difference between Jiva and Paramatma, the individual soul and the supersoul. The individual soul is forever a servant of the supersoul, and therefore his relationship with the supersoul is to offer service. That is called Bhakti Yoga or Bhakti Bhava. Dhruva Mahārāja offered his prayers to the Lord not in the way of the impersonalist philosophers, but as a devotee. Therefore it is clearly said here, Bhakti Bhava. The only prayers worth offering are those offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose reputation is spread far and wide. Dhruva Mahārāja wanted to have the kingdom of his father, but his father refused to even allow him to get on his lap. In order to fulfill his desire, the Lord had already created a planet known as the pole star, Dhruvaloka, which was never to be annihilated even at the time of the dissolution of the universe. Dhruva Mahārāja did not attain this perfection by acting hastily, but by patiently executing the order of his spiritual master and therefore he became so successful that he saw the Lord face to face. Now he was further enabled by the causeless mercy of the Lord to offer fitting prayers to the Lord. To glorify or to offer prayers unto the Supreme, one needs the Lord's mercy. One cannot write to glorify the Lord unless one is endowed with his causeless mercy. 6. Dhruva Mahārāja said, "My dear Lord, you are all-powerful. After entering within me, you have enlivened all my sleeping senses, my hands, legs, ears, touch sensation, life force, and especially my power of speech. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto you." Purport. Dhruva Mahārāja could understand very easily the difference between his condition before and after attaining spiritual realization and seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face. He could understand that his life force and activities had been sleeping. Unless one comes to the spiritual platform, his bodily limbs, mind, and other facilities within the body are understood to be sleeping. Unless one is spiritually situated, all his activities are taken as a dead man's activities or ghostly activities. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has composed a song in which he addresses himself, "O living entity, get up. How long shall you sleep on the lap of Maya? Now you have the opportunity of possessing a human form of body. Now try to get up and realize yourself." The Vedas also declare, "Get up, get up. You have the opportunity, the boon of the human form of life. Now realize yourself." These are the Vedic injunctions. Dhruva Mahārāja actually experienced that upon enlightenment of his senses on the spiritual platform, he could understand the essence of Vedic instruction, that the Supreme Godhead is the Supreme Person. He is not impersonal. Dhruva Mahārāja could immediately understand this fact. He was aware that for a very long time, he was practically sleeping, and he felt the impetus to glorify the Lord according to the Vedic conclusion. A mundane person cannot offer any prayer or glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead because he has no realization of the Vedic conclusion. When Dhruva Mahārāja, therefore, found this difference within himself, he could immediately understand that it was because of the causeless mercy of the Lord. He offered obeisances to the Lord with great respect and reverence, completely understanding that the Lord's favor was upon him. This spiritual enlivenment of Dhruva Mahārāja's senses, mind, etc., was due to the action of the internal potency of the Lord. In this verse, therefore, the word swadhamna means by spiritual energy. Spiritual enlightenment is possible by the mercy of the spiritual energy of the Lord. The chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra is first addressed to this spiritual energy of the Lord, Hare. This spiritual energy acts when a living entity fully surrenders and accepts his position as an eternal servitor. When a person places himself at the disposal or order of the Supreme Lord, that is called Sevonmukha. At that time, the spiritual energy gradually reveals the Lord to him. Without revelation by the spiritual energy, one is unable to offer prayers glorifying the Lord. Any amount of philosophical speculation or poetic expression by mundane persons is still considered to be the action and reaction of the material energy. When one is actually enlivened by the spiritual energy, all his senses become purified, and he engages only in the service of the Lord. At that time, his hands, legs, ear, tongue, mind, genitals, everything engaged in the service of the Lord. Such an enlightened devotee no longer has any material activities, nor has he any interest in being materially engaged. This process of purifying the senses and engaging them in the service of the Lord is known as bhakti, or devotional service. In the beginning, the senses are engaged by the direction of the spiritual master and shastra, and after realization, when the same senses are purified, the engagement continues. The difference is that in the beginning, the senses are engaged in a mechanical way, but after realization, they are engaged in spiritual understanding. 7. My Lord, you are the Supreme One, but By your different energies, you appear differently in the spiritual and material worlds. You create the total energy of the material world by your external potency, and after creation you enter within the material world as the Supersoul. You are the Supreme Person, and through the temporary modes of material nature you create varieties of manifestation, just as fire, entering into wood of different shapes, burns brilliantly in different varieties. Purport. Dhruva Maharaj realized that the Supreme Absolute Truth, the Personality of Godhead, acts through his different energies, not that he becomes void or impersonal and thus becomes all-pervading. The Mayavadi philosopher thinks that the Absolute Truth, being spread throughout the cosmic manifestation, has no personal form. But here Dhruva Maharaj, upon realization of the Vedic conclusion, says, you are spread all over the cosmic manifestation by your energy. This energy is basically spiritual, but because it acts in the material world temporarily, it is called Maya, or illusory energy. In other words, for everyone but the devotees, the Lord's energy acts as external energy. Dhruva Maharaj could understand this fact very nicely, and he could understand also that the energy and the energetic are one and the same. The energy cannot be separated from the energetic. The identity of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the feature of Paramatma, or Supersoul, is admitted herein. His original spiritual energy enlivens the material energy, and thus the dead body appears to have life force. Voidist philosophers think that under certain material conditions, symptoms of life occur in the material body, but the fact is that the material body cannot act on its own. Even a machine needs separate energy, electricity, steam, etc. It is stated in this verse that the material energy acts in varieties of material bodies, just as fire burns differently in different wood, according to the size and quality of the wood. In the case of devotees, the same Yata yavihito vanir darushvekvaso yonishu naneva bhati vishmava bhuteshu chatatapuman. Sorry, couldn't help it. In the case of devotees, the same energy is transformed into spiritual energy. This is possible because the energy is originally spiritual, not material. As it is said, Vishnu Shakti Para Prokta, the original energy inspires a devotee, and thus he engages all his bodily limbs in the service of the Lord. The same energy, as external potency, engages the ordinary non-devotees in material activities for sense enjoyment. We should mark the difference between Maya and Swadharma. For devotees, the Swadharma acts, whereas in the case of non-devotees, the Maya energy acts. It's interesting just as how inextricably strong and absorbing the material energy is for the conditioned soul. The spiritual energy also takes over our lives. As when we cross into exclusively taking shelter of the spiritual energy, we're held by that energy just as much as we're held by the material energy, or more so. You know how easy it is to fall into Maya and be like, and how hard it is to get out of it. So if you become absorbed in Krishna, then you can't get out of that. That's where we want to be. Text number 8. O my Master, Lord Brahma is fully surrendered unto you. In the beginning you gave him knowledge, and thus you could see and understand the entire universe, just as a person awakens from sleep and visualizes his immediate duties. You are the only shelter of all persons who desire liberation, and you are the friend of all who are distressed. How, therefore, can a learned person who has perfect knowledge ever forget you? Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot be forgotten even for a moment by his surrendered devotees. The devotee understands that the Lord's causeless mercy is beyond his estimation. He cannot know how much he is benefited by the grace of the Lord. The more a devotee engages himself in the devotional service of the Lord, the more encouragement is supplied by the energy of the Lord. In the Bhagavad-gītā, the Lord says that to those who are constantly engaged in devotional service with love and affection, The Supreme Personality of Godhead gives intelligence from within, and thus they may make further progress. Being so encouraged, the devotee can never forget at any moment the Personality of Godhead. He always feels obliged to him for having achieved increased power in devotional service by his grace. Saintly persons like Sanak, Sanatan, and Lord Brahma were able to see the entire universe by the mercy of the Lord through knowledge of the Lord. The example is given that a person may apparently abstain from sleep all day, but as long as he is not spiritually enlightened, he is actually sleeping. He may sleep at night and perform his duties in the daytime, but as long as he does not come to the platform of working in spiritual enlightenment, he is considered to be always sleeping. A devotee, therefore, never forgets the benefit derived from the Lord. The Lord is addressed here as Artabandhu, which means friend of the distressed. As stated in the Bhagavad-gītā, after many, many births of executing severe austerities in search of knowledge, one comes to the point of real knowledge and becomes wise when he surrenders unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Mayavadi philosopher who does not surrender unto the Supreme Person is understood to be lacking in real knowledge. The devotee in perfect knowledge cannot forget his obligation to the Lord at any moment. Text 9. Persons who worship you simply for sense gratification of this bag of skin are certainly influenced by your illusory energy. In spite of having you, who are like a desire tree and are the cause of liberation from birth and death, foolish persons such as me desire benediction from you for sense gratification, which is available even for those who live in hellish conditions. Purport. Dhruva Mahārāja repented because he came to the Lord to render devotional service for material profit. He here condemns his attitude. Only due to gross lack of knowledge does one worship the Lord for material profit or for sense gratification. The Lord is like a desire tree. Anyone can have whatever he desires from the Lord, but people in general do not know what kind of benediction they should ask from him. Happiness derived from the touch of skin or sensuous happiness is present in the life of hogs and dogs. Such happiness is very insignificant. If a devotee worships the Lord for such insignificant happiness, he must be considered devoid of all knowledge. 10. My Lord, the transcendental bliss derived from meditating upon your lotus feet or hearing about your glories from pure devotees is so unlimited that it is far beyond the stage of Brahmananda, wherein one thinks himself merged into the impersonal Brahman as one with the Supreme. Since Brahmananda is also defeated by the transcendental bliss derived from devotional service, what to speak of the temporary blissfulness of elevating oneself to the heavenly planets, which is ended by the separating sword of time. Although one may be elevated to the heavenly planets, he falls down in due course of time. Purport. The transcendental bliss derived from devotional service, primarily from Shravanam Kirtanam, hearing and chanting, cannot be compared with the happiness derived by karmis, by elevating themselves to the heavenly planets, or by the jnanis or yogis who enjoy oneness with the Supreme Impersonal Brahman. Yogis generally meditate upon the transcendental form of Vishnu, but devotees do not only meditate upon him, but actually engage in the direct service of the Lord. In the previous verse, we find the phrase bhavapyaya, which means birth and death. The Lord can give relief from the chain of birth and death. It is a misunderstanding to think, as do the monists, that when one gets relief from the process of birth and death, he merges into the Supreme Brahman. Here it is clearly said that the transcendental bliss derived from Shravanam Kirtanam by pure devotees cannot be compared with Brahmananda, or the impersonal conception of transcendental bliss derived by merging into the Absolute. The position of karmis is still more degraded. Their aim is to elevate themselves to the higher planetary systems. It is said, Yanti Deva Vrata Devan. Persons who worship the demigods are elevated to the heavenly planets. Bhagavad-gītā 9.25. But elsewhere in the Bhagavad-gītā 9.21, we find Shinye Punye Martya Lokam Vishanti. Those who are elevated to higher planetary systems must come down again as soon as the results of their pious activities are exhausted. They are like the modern astronauts who go to the moon. As soon as their fuel is used up, they are obliged to come back down to this earth. As the modern astronauts who go to the moon or other heavenly planets by force of jet propulsion have to come down again after exhausting their fuel, so also do those who are elevated to the heavenly planets by force of yajnas or pious activities. Antakashi lulitat. The sword of time. By the sword of time, one is cut from his exalted position. Antakasi lulitat. By the sword of time, one is cut from his exalted position within this material world, and he again comes down. Antakasi lulitat. You don't like it? You like it too much? A little too much? Okay. Antakasi lulitat. Dhruva Maharaj appreciated that the results of devotional service are far more valuable than merging into the Absolute or being elevated to the heavenly planets. The words patatam vimanat are significant. Vimana means airplane. Those who are elevated to the heavenly planets are like airplanes which drop when they run out of fuel. Dhruva Maharaj continued, O unlimited Lord, kindly bless me so that I can be associated with the great devotees who engage in your transcendental loving service constantly, as the waves of a river constantly flow. Such transcendental devotees are completely situated in an uncontaminated state of life by the process of devotion with the waves of blazing, fire-like dangers. It will be very easy for me, for I am becoming mad to hear about your transcendental qualities and pastimes, which are eternally existent. Purport. The significant point in Dhruva Maharaj's statement is that he wanted the association of pure devotees. Transcendental devotional service cannot be complete and cannot be relishable without the association of devotees. We have therefore established the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Anyone who is trying to be aloof from this Krishna Consciousness Society and yet engage in Krishna Consciousness is living in a great hallucination, for this is not possible. From this statement of Dhruva Maharaj, it is clear that unless one is associated with devotees, his devotional service does not mature. It does not become distinct from material activities. The Lord says, Satam prasangam ambavirya sambido vadant hitkarna rasayana kata. Only in the association of pure devotees can the words of Lord Krishna be fully potent and relishable to the heart and ear. Bhagavatam 3.25.25. Dhruva Maharaj explicitly wanted the association of devotees. That association in devotional activities is just like the waves of an incessantly flowing river. In our Krishna Consciousness Society, we have full engagement 24 hours a day. Every moment of our time is always busily engaged in the service of the Lord. This is called the incessant flow of devotional service. A Mayavadi philosopher may question us, you may be very happy in the association of devotees. What is your plan for crossing the ocean of material existence? Dhruva Maharaj's answer is that it is not very difficult. He clearly says that this ocean can be crossed very easily if one simply becomes mad to hear the glories of the Lord. Bhavad guna kata. For one who persistently engages in hearing the topics of the Lord from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, and Caitanya-caritāmṛta, that's what we're talking about, and who is actually addicted to this process, just as one becomes addicted to intoxicants. It is very easy to cross the nescience of material existence. The ocean of material nescience is compared with a blazing fire, but to a devotee, this blazing fire is insignificant because he is completely absorbed in devotional service. Although the material world is blazing fire, to a devotee it appears full of pleasure. Vishvam Purnam Sukhayate. The purport of this statement by Dhruva Maharaj is that devotional service in the association of devotees is the cause of the development of further devotional service. By devotional service only is one elevated to the transcendental planet, Goloka Vrindavan, and there also there is only devotional service. For the activities of devotional service, both in this world and in the spiritual world, are one and the same. Devotional service does not change. The example of a mango can be given here. If one gets an unripe mango, it is still a mango, and when it is ripe, it remains the same mango. But it becomes more tasteful and relishable. Similarly, there is devotional service performed according to the direction of the spiritual master and the injunctions and regulative principles of Shastra, and there is devotional service in the spiritual world rendered directly in association with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But they are both the same. There is no change. The difference is that one stage is unripe and the other is ripe and more relishable. It is possible to mature in devotional service only in the association of devotees. Take a couple of reflections. Go right ahead. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. No more mic? Okay. We'll just keep going then.
I have a question, Guru Maharaj. So, the example of fire in the wood, like one can see that yatha yavito vanitarushva ekaso yonishu, right? For me, I don't understand that. Like for me, it is like more. Even in the Bhagavad-gītā, where it is said that in mode of goodness, one sees one living being in everyone. Something like that. So, it is like, that how to understand it feels like more of impersonal or Mayavadi concept that oneness, but how we can understand that, we are all different individual. It feels like, everything is one.
You feel that everything's one?
No, the example, I'm saying that the fire in wood.
Sure. Well, Krishna is in every atom, and he's also in the heart of every living being. And he's a person. A living being's also a person. Just as in a tree, there may be a bird, two birds sitting in the same tree. One bird is the eating bird, and the other one's the witnessing bird. So Krishna's there in the heart of every living being. And then there's the living being who's subjected to the modes of nature because he's tiny and he's also the energy of the Lord, but he can become overwhelmed by the Lord's external energy, even though he's superior to it because it's controlled by the Lord. And the conception of God that's given in the Upanishads and that's realized by Dhruva and all others who perform devotional service is that the Lord's a person, and everybody else who's a part and parcel of Krishna is also a person. Natve vahum chatunasam natvam nemi janadipa. In the Bhagavad-gītā, Krishna confirms you're a person in the past, you've been here, you'll be here in the future, and right now you're also a person. So although you can construe an impersonal understanding from the metaphor of fire, but it's ultimately personal. Like you're a person, right? And I'm a person, and we're right here, right now. You have personal features. You have your own personal intelligence. I don't have much, but I got something. And so we all have the experience of being persons. So why would that change and then suddenly become impersonal? Is there another point or question? We'll just take a couple more and then move on. Go ahead, Mahendra. And then Dhruv.
Yeah, this purport is epic. It's just, it encompasses everything you need. Association of devotees. Forget about any advancement. And then at the end, we have to become addicted to Bhagavatam and Caitanya-caritāmṛta, just like addicted to intoxicants. And how do we do that? Take your dose in a good company. That's how people become addicted to it.
You can overdose.
Yeah, you can overdose.
Just like with drugs. You took too much. That's what happened to him. He just kept reading and reading and reading.
I noticed a few times, I think in the last few verses, Srila Prabhupada makes this point in the purport of the connection between advancement in devotional service, mature devotional service, and the connection between association of devotees. And I feel like it's been brought up numerous times in this chapter so far. I think it really stresses the point of the importance of we know this, but the importance of the association that you're having, and the inspiration and influence that comes from that, and how that impacts your devotional service, your inspiration in devotional service to do more and to do better.
Yeah, it can't be emphasized enough. The reason I become entangled in the material world, Purusha Prakriti Stohi Bhunte Prakriti Jan Gunan Karanam Gunasangosya Sarasadyoni Janmasu, in the 13th chapter of the Gita, 22nd verse. Krishna says, by association, we've attained what we've come to have here in the material world, good or bad, whatever it is, it's all by association. And as you're saying, similarly, whatever advancement we make in devotional service is by the association that we keep. The outside people's party, I can't see who it is, but please go ahead.
Hi Krishna, just
okay, please go ahead.
Verse 4, 9, 11, it talks about it is possible to mature in devotional service only in the association of devotees. And on this point, I was thinking that there's always some fine print involved, because there's subtleties in associating with devotees, because sometimes alarm bells may go. Devotees, sometimes it's been observed that it's better they come not so often, because they become familiar and then they start disturbing all the devotees in the atmosphere. So I was thinking, together with that, there's some fine print involved, because it's not that we want to be fearful in associating with devotees, but it requires careful thought in what we say when we open our mouth and how we interact with devotees.
It's an excellent point.
Thank you.
Something that Narada said earlier, which was profound, and that was that the way we interact with other people can determine our station in life and how happy we are. Just that way of properly interacting, what to speak of with devotees. So association may be there, but if we offend devotees or are envious of them, don't know how to take advantage of their association, then we may not be able to advance. In fact, we may fall back by offending devotees. So in the fine print, you're saying, right? Yeah, we have to read the fine print and be careful. Yes. Nice points.
Maharaj, today when we were attending the ICC meeting and you are presenting like, okay, these are the books that should be like campaign that we are doing in a year. Okay, these are the 3 books, and after that I had reflection. Okay, how many books we can add, and what are the criteria to add that books? And here Prabhupada writes in the purport directly, and that it should be aligned with the what Acharya. We can add as many number of books, but then there should be some substance. And I felt I had this reflection when after the meeting, but now it like it's there.
It popped up, right?
Yeah, directly in the pages is written that okay, what are the books that should be?
Yeah. Bhagavad-gītā, Caitanya-caritāmṛta, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. We'll do all the books, everything, but it's just so tidy to take care of the basics. And besides, we can see this. Here we are in the Fourth Canto. If we read this 108 times, if you all cancel your ticket, and we won't come to the end of it. We'll still be entering deeper and deeper into this one canto. What to speak of one chapter, or just the prayers, or something like that. And we conceived of this perpetual distribution chain. In the beginning, the idea of Bhadra-pūrṇimā, not everybody accepted it because they were afraid that it would cannibalize the end of year marathon, which was non-descript. It was just do as much as you can. And actually it started off with it used to be 10 days or something like that. Anyways, what's the harm in having perpetual book distribution going on? Because there's unlimited people who are coming to Krishna consciousness. They have to be engaged. And Prabhupada gave us those books, so we might as well plan how to distribute them to the world. On the release of all of them, he gave instructions to print them in large quantities and distribute them, including the Caitanya-caritāmṛta. Prabhu, go ahead, stop me as soon as you can. I don't want to get riled up. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was thinking that of this verse, Iha yasya harirdasya karmana manasagira nikhilasapapi avasthasu jivan mukta sauchyate. Like the Mayavadis say that now it's okay, you are associating with the devotees, but about the liberation. And the verse says that the devotees don't have to go anywhere. Wherever they are in the 3 material worlds, they are liberated.
Yeah. And also Narayana Paraksarvena Kutischanda Pibditi Swarga Pavarga Narakeshu Apitulyarta Darshana. Okay, let's read a little more. We're in the home stretch for today. Did I end on 12? Or are we starting on 12? Okay. O Lord, who has a lotus navel, if a person happens to associate with a devotee whose heart always hankers after your lotus feet, seeking always their fragrance, he is never attached to the material body or in relationship with it, offspring, friends, home, wealth, and wife, which are very, very dear to materialistic persons. He does not care for them. Purport. A special advantage in devotional service is that devotees not only enjoy the transcendental pastimes of the Lord by hearing and chanting and glorifying them, but also they are not very much attached to their bodies, unlike the yogis who are too attached to the body and who think that by performing bodily gymnastic exercises they will advance in spiritual consciousness. Yogis are generally not very much interested in devotional service. They want to regulate the breathing process. This is simply a bodily concern. Here, Dhruva Maharaj plainly says that a devotee has no more bodily interest. He knows that he is not the body. From the very beginning, therefore, without wasting time in bodily exercises, a devotee searches out a pure devotee, and simply by his association becomes more advanced in spiritual consciousness than any yogi. Because a devotee knows that he is not the body, he is never affected by bodily happiness or distress. He is not interested in bodily relationships with wife, children, home, bank balance, etc. or in the distress or happiness which comes from these things. This is the special advantage of being a devotee. This status of life is possible only when a person is interested in associating with a pure devotee who always enjoys the fragrance of the lotus feet of the Lord. My dear Lord, O Supreme Unborn, I know that the different varieties of living entities, such as animals, trees, birds, reptiles, demigods, and human beings, are spread throughout the universe, which is caused by the total material energy. And I know that they are sometimes manifest and sometimes unmanifest. But I have never experienced the supreme form I behold as I see you now. Now all kinds of theorizing processes are finished. Purport. In the Bhagavad-gītā, the Lord says that He has spread Himself throughout the universe. But although everything is resting upon Him, He is aloof. The same concept is expressed here by Dhruva Maharaj. He states that before seeing the transcendental form of the Lord, he had experienced only the varieties of the material forms, which are counted at 8,400,000 species of aquatics, birds, beasts, etc. The fact is that unless one engages in the devotional service of the Lord, it is impossible for him to understand the ultimate form of the Lord. This is also confirmed in the Bhagavad-gītā 18.55. Bhaktyamam abhijanati. Factual understanding of the Absolute Truth, who is the Supreme Person, cannot be obtained by any process other than devotional service. Dhruva Maharaj here compares his previous state of understanding with the perfection of understanding the presence of the Supreme Lord. The position of a living entity is to render service unless he comes to the stage of appreciating the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He engages in the service of the various forms of trees, reptiles, animals, men, demigods, etc. One can experience that one man engages in the service of a dog, another serves plants and creepers, another the demigods, and another humanity or his boss in the office. But no one is engaged in the service of Krishna. Aside from common men, even men who are elevated in terms of spiritual understanding are at the utmost engaged in the service of Virat Rupa, or unable to understand the ultimate form of the Lord, they worship voidism by meditation. Dhruva Maharaj, however, had been blessed by the Supreme Lord. When the Lord touched his conch shell to Dhruva's forehead, real knowledge was revealed from within, and Dhruva could understand the Lord's transcendental form. Dhruva Maharaj here admits that not only was he ignorant, but by years he was only a child. It would not have been possible for an ignorant child to appreciate the supreme form of the Lord had he not been blessed by the Lord, who touched his conch shell to Dhruva's forehead. (14) My dear Lord, at the end of each millennium, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govardhan Vishnu, dissolves everything manifested within the universe in his belly. He lies down on the lap of Sheshanaga. From his navel sprouts a golden lotus flower on a stem, and on that lotus, Lord Brahma is created. I can understand that you are the same Supreme Godhead. I therefore offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Purport. Dhruva Maharaj's understanding of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is complete. In the Vedas it is said, Yasmid Vijnate Sarvam Evam Vijnatam Bhavanti. Knowledge received through the transcendental causeless mercy of the Lord is so perfect that by that knowledge, the devotee becomes acquainted with all the different manifestations of the Lord. Lord Kshirodakshai Vishnu was present before Dhruva Maharaj, who could also understand the Lord's two other forms, namely Garbhodakshai Vishnu and Karadakshai Vishnu, Maha Vishnu. Regarding Maha Vishnu, it is stated in the Brahma Samhita, Yasyaika nishvasita kalam atavalambya jivanti loma vilaja jagadananata Vishnur mahansa iha yasya kala vishesho Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Vajami. At the end of each and every millennium, When all the material worlds are dissolved, everything enters the body of Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, who is lying on the lap of Sheshanaga, another form of the Lord. Those who are not devotees cannot understand the different forms of Vishnu and their positions in regard to the creation. Sometimes the atheists argue, how can a flower stem sprout from the navel of Garbhodakshaya Vishnu? They consider all the statements of the Shastras to be stories. As a result of their inexperience in the absolute truth and their reluctance to accept authority, they become more and more atheistic. They cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But a devotee like Dhruva Maharaj, by the grace of the Lord, knows all the manifestations of the Lord and their different positions. It is said that anyone who has even a little of the Lord's grace can understand His glories. Others may go on speculating on the absolute truth, but they will always be unable to understand the Lord. In other words, unless one comes in contact with a devotee, it is not possible to understand the transcendental form or the spiritual world and its transcendental activities. Any last comments? Yes.
Verse 12, I'm not little sure about that. Like in this, it says that we don't care about the body relationships and other things. But in bhakti also, like even we have to maintain our body, like exercise. We have to keep fit so that we can do more service. We have to maintain our relationship so that we can more engage in service. So, how does this verse relates? I was not able to comprehend this 12th.
Sure. Well, at the end of the 7th canto of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Narada explains that in householder dharma, as an example, a person is very attentive to family members in the sense that they cannot be neglected and survive. They have to be given affection and attention, which is one and the same practically in a way. And that at the same time, the devotees doing it in more of a sense of duty than being attached. Of course, there's always attachment. Otherwise, it wouldn't be possible to live with people because they just drive you completely crazy. But the devotee becomes more effective in relationships because those, just starting with the materialistic side, those who are attached and are controlled by the material modes of nature, although they may say, oh, I love you, or so forth, because it's a product of the modes of nature, that love is wavering. It comes and goes based on how one's affected by the material nature. And when there's emotion, and then there's conflict, separation, and so forth, the person's life becomes completely disturbed because they're so controlled by their senses and emotions and attachments to the other person based on the fact that, oh, you're my bodily relation. But a devotee's relationship is much deeper because he sees, she sees, this person that I'm with is part of Krishna, and sees the dual relationship he or she has, that there's a family relationship, but there's also a relationship as a soul or devotee, like parents who raise children in Krishna consciousness. They obviously love their children. It'd be very difficult if you didn't love a child because they take a lot of work. But at the same time, they have a sense that this is a soul who's part of Krishna, and it's my duty to raise it. So they have this overarching sense of responsibility to Krishna. And because of that overarching sense and that's actually fulfilling because they're doing it as service. So if somebody in a relationship between husband and wife, there's a sense, obviously some sense of affection, but the overarching feeling is, oh, this person's a devotee. And we're helping each other in devotional service. So that's how devotee thinks. And furthermore, as is in the 5th chapter, Rishabhadeva's prayers to his 100 sons, he talks about how the householder is not so optimistic about developing a nest and getting all comfy, because they don't want to be comfortable. They want to be engaged in devotional service. And they take what comes by Krishna's grace, and they are good stewards, expert stewards of whatever resources Krishna gives them, but they're not attached to it just on the basis of accumulating wealth for its own sake and so forth. So the life of a devotee in the material world is the devotees never become attached to the bodily concept of life, even though they're in the midst of family life. And even if they do, then because they're performing devotional service, they will easily come out of that. Look at Priyavrata. Priyavrata was ready to just go the long route of brahmacharya. He was all set up there in a cave on the side of a mountain with Narada as his teacher. And then the GBC came down and said, you got to take a position as a temple president somewhere. And he said, no thanks, I don't want to do it. And Swayambhuva Manu said, no, you have to. And then Brahma came and said, yeah, you got to do this. So they told him, you'll never become attached, but he did. But then he just came right out of it, because it's like those companies, they make these kind of wraps. It's amazing. Fascinates me. Of course, in the beginning there was saran wrap, right? But I've seen some even more advanced ones now, because they have the best physics majors working on these materials. You wrap some prasadam in it. It should stick, but it doesn't. And it's strong, but it's effective, but it never gets attached. So the devotee is like that. It's protected from becoming attached, even though doing so many duties in the world. And in another sense, the integrated approach to devotional service is very helpful. Vidyam cha yas, you knew that was coming. Vidyam cha yas, tadvedo bayam saha. Side by side, nescience and ignorance, there's a way in which the juxtaposition of those two gives a deeper insight into the power of devotional service, because you're integrated with the world and you exercise the instructions given by Krishna in the Bhagavad-gītā, and it confirms how they work. If I'm isolated throughout my whole life and not obligated to integrate into the world, I may not get as much experience in seeing how effective the spiritual instructions of Krishna are. Is that all right?
Thank you, Maharaj, for the relationship. And the first part, that bodily exercise and other things, that was also kind of not like is kind of condemned. I'll say so.
Who condemned it?
In the translation and purport, that in the purport basically that by performing bodily gymnastic exercise they will advance in spiritual consciousness. The sentence.
Well, this is in relationship to yogis. They actually think that in light of yoga by Iyengar. He really equates the idea of when your body's in harmony, then your soul can be in harmony. I mean, to some degree, it's kind of true, but it's not like you're going to attain enlightenment by learning how to do a headstand. So there, at the same time, our Prabhupada's approach to those things was he didn't want the devotees to become swept away by them. There's a lot of fads, right, Nanda? There were a lot of fads throughout the years. People would catch on to some health doctor, some natural doctor, and everyone would be eating really weird, austere stuff. And then it turned out the doctor was a quack anyway, and the devotees were on the diet for 2 years. They looked all skinny and dried up, and they got all distracted from everything. So there's lots of ways people get distracted. There was a whole scam thing about selling jewelry. Remember that one? There was a jewelry thing. It was sort of like you buy a bunch of jewelry, get other people to buy the jewelry, and then this and that. And you hear Prabhupada on some of his lectures. He was saying, if you do this, then you'll become a jeweler. Our thing is to sell books, he said, Krishna books, not jewels. So there's unlimited ways that people can become distracted and say, oh, I'm using this in Krishna's service, and then become more entangled and distracted from actually doing devotional service. So you got to be a little careful. Same time, you got to exercise. It's a panacea. If you don't exercise and you just slam sweets all day long, you're going to get type 2 diabetes and die an early death unnecessarily. You have to be careful. Prabhupada says that too. And Krishna says, yukta hara viharasya, yukta chestasya karmasu, yukta swapna vabodasya, yogo bhavati dukkha. Just be balanced. Don't go nuts.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Yeah. Kamasya nendriya pratir labo jivete yavata jivasya tatva jignasa narto yashcheha karmavi. Live a balanced life so that you can have vitality to inquire about Krishna consciousness. But don't, live in a gym or something like that. What do you do besides lift weights? I put them back down again. Uh-oh, we're over time. You want to save it for tomorrow? Okay, go ahead.
I'm just appreciating more and more how this reading is just transforming our vision. It's the same world around us, but actually we're changing our vision of it. So Prabhupada's genius in his purports, it's just purifying our intelligence. And then I heard this nice statement like, it's not the world that has to change, but our vision of it. So it's a very...
Yeah, it reminds me...
Go ahead.
It just reminds me, we were reading the Fourth Canto a few years ago, and I distinctly remember there was one brahmachari that was here, and he was talking. I walked past. It was we had some really intense sessions hearing. I mean, it's just so transformative. Everyone was walking out like, where am I? And I just remember this one brahmachari. He was talking to his guru, and he goes, what was I thinking? I interrupted, please.
No,
finish.
thank you. And of course, Dhruva Maharaj, how you said we could read 108 times, of course, that's what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was doing. And on his level, he has his particular experience, but he's teaching us how these pastimes are relishable at all stages. And for him, he's extracting so many jewels. He's mining this lila for that determination. When the determination is there, the goal can be reached. Hare Krishna.
So much about determination in this pastime. Dear Srila Prabhupada, I know you had a question. Tomorrow? Okay, sorry. Dear Srila Prabhupada, dear Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Shri Shri Panchatattva, if you so desire, please give us unbreakable determination in our practice of devotional service, and also please give us discrimination so that we can know what to do and what not to do. Thank you for considering our request. Om Tat Sat. Everyone who agrees with this prayer in whole or in part, please unmute and say Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna!
Gaur Premanande. Nitai Gaura Haribo. 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo. Nitai Gaura Haribo. 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo. Vanchakalpadrishya Kripasindhabevacha Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Nantakodi Vaishnavini ki Jai.